We're gonna get started in just a second, we're getting the Zoom recording going. Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. I think that Kristen is our speaker.
Okay.
Yeah, make sure you can see yourself.
Okay.
You don't want to get.
I'm on the Zoom. All right,
I
it's
would encourage you
working.
to get closer to the camera. The Zoom.
All right. Good evening.
And, Jason, you probably have to manage the admitting. You see that people are going to join.
I'll stay right here.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Kristen Carlson. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development at Harbor Light Homes here in Beverly. We're here with our partners at Beacon Communities to welcome you and give you some information about the lottery for Beverly Village for Living in the Arts. You go to the net. All right. Thank you. So as I said, Beverly Village is a collaboration between Harbor Light Homes, represented by me and my colleague Anna, who knows all things lottery, and our friends at Beacon Communities. So we've got Matt here as well as Jason. So we've got a great team. Between the four of us, we should be able to answer lots of questions. So just a quick little bit about Harbor Light Homes. We are a nonprofit. We develop and manage affordable housing across the North Shore. So from Lynn, Saugus up to Cape Ann, that's kind of our footprint. We're headquartered in Beverly. So we're always nearby. We do a variety of different housing types, housing for families, housing for seniors, housing for homeless individuals. We're working on one that's going to be housing for homeless young adults. So we do a whole variety of stuff. Oh, it's okay. Great, okay. And you may be familiar with some of our existing properties here in Beverly, Turtle Creek, Turtle Woods, Harbor Lighthouse. And we've got a lot of development upcoming here on the right that keeps me very busy. So it's a whole range of stuff, everything from Raleigh to downtown Lynn, senior housing to homeless young adults and everything in between. Oh. Thanks. Thank you. And this is a visual. This sort of shows all the communities that we are currently in and working in, and we're always looking at new stuff. So feel free to check out our website or ask us about what we have going on, because there's always more stuff coming up. Okay, and with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jason. Oh, sorry.
Great, thanks, Kristen. So my name is Matt Tobine, and I work for Beacon Communities. And as Kristen said, Beverly Village is being redeveloped in a collaborative effort between Beacon Communities and Harbor Light Homes. However, Beacon Communities will be providing the property management services for the community. Just a little bit about the company. We're approximately 20,000 apartment homes large, over about 150 communities or so. We're in many states east of the Mississippi. However, we're a Boston-based company, and a lot of our real estate is right here in Massachusetts. We have, our communities sort of span the range of what can be offered in multifamily housing, as far as what kind of program types and who they serve and things like that. But we have a lot of senior housing, which is what Beverly Village is going to be. We're thrilled to be able to do business in Beverly again. If our name sounds familiar to you, we own and manage Jacqueline Tower right down the street at 215 Randall Street. And, like I said, we love Beverly. We want to be here. We want to be, a part of the community and further strengthen those roots and connections within the city. And so, we felt like Beverly Village was a great project to take on, and and undertake with Harbor Light. Yeah, you can skip that one. One of the things that Beacon is particularly proud of, we offer a number of services from the property management standpoint within multifamily housing. One of the things that we're most excited about is our wellness program, which will be a component at Beverly Village. And the goal of the program, especially at our senior communities, is to assist people to age in place by offering programs and services that, that if not offered, may shorten their time to live independently. So some of the things that we do on site is and we hope to make these a component of Beverly Village, our nursing services and what I would call light healthcare, where we have a visiting nurse come in to take vitals, even help schedule doctor's appointments with people who may be struggling with referral or struggling to get a hold of their doctor. We offer health, fitness, education classes. We offer computer learning, and we'll have things like a bus that comes to the site to help people get to where they need to go a little bit easier without, necessarily having to drive themselves. And the bus will take you to places like doctor's appointments or the grocery store or things like that. At Beverly Village, we're going to have a full-time property management staff. There'll be a full-time property manager. There'll be a full-time resident service coordinator, and there'll be full-time maintenance and 24-hour emergency maintenance. So,
On site.
yes, on site. Yep. So we're very excited about the project. We're putting a lot of resources towards making it the best possible project that we can conceive and execute on. And we're very excited to be able to offer this. So I will be available after if there are any questions. And with that, I will turn it over to Jay so that she can talk a little bit more about the development itself.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm Jaysa Feliz. I am the development director, so I have been overseeing the redevelopment of this building to convert the very beloved former Bristol School into what will become Beverly Village for Living in the Arts. So, yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. I will repeat part of that. I'm Jaysa Feliz. I'm the development director. So I've been overseeing the redevelopment, the design and construction of the former and beloved Bristol School into what will become Beverly Village for Living in the Arts, this beautiful new community that we are creating by transforming this building that is entering its next century of life. So the original school was built in 1923. So it's 100 years old. And so its next 100 years of life, we're very honored to be part of creating that into a vibrant, affordable senior housing and artist live and performing arts multi-generational community. So we're very excited for the transformation. It's been a great joy for me personally and professionally to just oversee the transformation of the building. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing in the physical space and what it will become once we're done with construction, which we're in the middle of, and we are anticipating completing this fall. We didn't tear down the building, we didn't demo the building, we preserved the building. It is a beautiful historic building that has strong bones. So this is a historic preservation. And so we are working within the existing spaces. So generally, former classrooms will become apartments, 85 senior affordable apartments, 74 one-bedrooms, and 11 studios. And then the former Boys and Girls Locker Room spaces will become 6 live-work studios with an occupancy preference for artists. The former gym will be transformed into amenity spaces for all our wonderful new residents. And I will get into what specifically will be in those amenity spaces. And then the former auditorium, we are preserving for use to hopefully be able to partner with a local theater partner to use as a community performing arts space. So that is the general vision behind the redevelopment. And some of the, aside from preserving this treasured historic asset, another development goal of ours was to make this a very green, sustainably designed and healthy building. And so that has been a really important component of the design and construction of the building. And so, some of the features to that end include, we're gonna have solar panels on the roof to power the electricity for the common areas and to power the heating of the hot water. All of the lights will be LEDs. We're gonna have Energy Star appliances. We have really efficient heating and cooling systems that recycle air. They're brand new, gorgeous windows that just kind of wrap the building so that you don't have unnecessary airflow coming in and out, so that it's wrapped tight and you can stay cool in the summer and warm in the winter and control your temperature as you'd like. And we're also installing a brand new water infiltration system on the site. So under the parking lot, there's a new system that will recycle water as well. And we will have electric vehicle charging stations, gardens, composting, and bike racks on site as well. So lots of components to make this a green and healthy place to live. And some of the amenities that I was referencing earlier, some of which are in the units and some will be in that former auditorium space. So inside the units, a popular one is almost every unit will have a washer and dryer inside of the apartment. And in those common areas where the gym used to be, there will be things like a community room, a library, a fitness center, a yoga room. There will be spaces for the visiting nurses that Matt was talking about, office spaces, and that's on the interior. We'll have a pet washing station as well. We are pet friendly. And then outside, and a computer learning center. And then outside, we'll have a beautiful patio and a small dog walking area as well. So we're really excited about the transformation of the building and what it is becoming. And here are just some sample floor plans of what the studio and one bedroom apartments could look like once someone has moved in with all their furniture. So as I mentioned, because this is a historic preservation project, because we are working within existing spaces that used to be classrooms and not all classrooms were the same. Similarly, not all apartments are going to be the same size or layout. So there is variation in the layout of the apartment. So this is just a taste of typically what an apartment could look like once completed.
I have one question, Brittany.
Do we want to take questions now, or should we hold?
Take it with that, hold it, hold your
Maybe
thought.
yeah, maybe write it down and we'll take it at the end. All right, and now I will hand it back over to Anna to talk about how you can be eligible to potentially live at this wonderful community.
Do you want to get that mic to Matt? Because he and I might have to talk to him a little.
Sure.
I also, can everyone hear me okay? I like to channel my inner is Anna. I get to, oh, here I am. I am gonna sit down for two reasons. One, I have an arthritic knee with a bone spur and it hurts, honestly. And two, I want everyone on the Zoom to be able to see my face. So hopefully this works okay for everybody. So as Jason said, my name is Anna Seedzik. I am the lottery agent. I work for Harbor Light Homes. If you are applying for this property, at some point, your documents will come through me. So I'm the person that supervises the review and eligibility determinations. Or doing things. Just keep going?
Yeah, just wanted to check.
Okay. So I'm going to talk you through the process of how to apply. What are we looking for? What are the documents we need? So that when you enter the lottery and we get to the point of the drawing, everyone feels comfortable with what has happened and what's going to happen next. About the questions, there's a fairly robust Q&A. So I'm going to ask that people hold your questions till the end because we might have figured out what it is you're going to ask, maybe. I also just want to remind everyone that this is a public recorded session. So if your question is deeply personal, unless you want the whole world to know about it forever, you might want to ask it privately, and I'm happy to talk to people after, or we can set up an appointment, so on and so forth. So just a housekeeping order there. Okay. So what we have here, this property has two different income eligibility groups. There's a lot of jargon on this page, and you don't need to understand it. That's what we are here to do. We are in the business of housing, and we love housing jargon. So we're not asking you to understand every piece of it, but we wanted to give you a sense of what you're looking at. The most important distinction here of this first column that says AMI, that stands for Area Median Income. And that's a metric that HUD, the federal government, develops to help sort people into income groups across the country. So BVLA will have two different income levels. One of them is the 30% AMI group, and one is the 60% AMI group. And I got it, multitasking now. And so there are studio and one-bedroom units at both income levels. You can see there that there is a distinction between age restriction for the different income groups. That has to do with the fact that some of these units at the 30% level are subsidized by either state or federal vouchers. We'll get into that in a little more detail. So as you're looking at this chart, the numbers that you want to look at, wow, it's on fire now. Everyone's joining this meeting. Sorry, we're getting lots of requests to join. The column there that says maximum gross annual income, that is the number that really sort of determines what group you're in. So if your maximum gross annual income, including all sources, including income from assets, hold that thought, we'll get to there in a minute. If you're above any of these levels, then you're going to move into the next group, which is the 60% AMI group. So that's the distinction between groups. Occupancy is the same, 1 or 2 person. These are all 1-bedroom studios. There are no 2 bedrooms. There are no 3 bedrooms. So everything is very rigid in terms of what's available based on size. The next question we get a lot is always about the rent. How do I figure out what the rent is? And there's 2 different ways it will be calculated. For the 30% units that have a subsidy, the resident will pay 30% of their gross income, and then the subsidy will pay the rest. That's just how those units work. If it's an unsubsidized unit, which is what you see for anything that has a 55 and up, that has a different age group, those do not have subsidies, and the rent is set at a maximum allowable level. And again, that's set by HUD every year. So the income is set by HUD and the maximum rents are set by HUD. We're required by law to follow them. They are not arbitrary, and they tend not to be super flexible either for those reasons. So that's what those numbers are all about. As Jason said, it's a total of 85 units. This is what's called the unit mix, which says how many units, what size, what income level, what age restriction. It's sort of like a menu for the property. Okay. I can mention it again. Yeah. So what Jason was just saying is just to draw your attention to that 62 and up and 55 and up. Those are the age limits for each unit type. One member of the household has to meet that age restriction by the day of the lottery. So what that means is if your birthday, unfortunately, is the day after the lottery, let's say you turn 55 the day after the lottery, you're not old enough by 1 day. And we've had a few people we've had to decline for that reason, and it's very It's very sad, but there has to be a limit at some point. So that is the limit. So if it is a subsidized unit, it's a 62 and up age restriction. It's if an unsubsidized unit, it's 55 and up, one member of the household. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is this not moving forward?
I don't know, sometimes you have to click the screen and
I
then.
know. It's like Zoom mania. I don't think so. Oh, gosh.
We got back. Oh, that's right.
Man. Okay, so now we're gonna work through some FAQ. I'm gonna sort of moderate this, but Jason and Matt and Kristen are gonna jump in to correct any mistakes that I might say. Again, a lot of this is really technical and you don't have to know all of it. That's what we're here for, but we want to be transparent about what's happening. So the first question is, why are there multiple rents for the same unit type? And this gets to what I was saying. We have two different income groups. There are subsidies and there are not subsidies. The best way to think about this is if you're in a subsidized unit and the rent is based on income, you're going to pay approximately 30% of your income for rent, regardless of what your income is. So in this example we've given you here, if you make $21,000 a year, you would pay approximately $7,000 a year towards rent. These are subsidized 30% units and the rents are variable. Someone making $21,000 a year would not pay the same as someone making 10, but you pay the same percentage. That's how that works. If your eligibility places you in an unsubsidized unit at either the 30 or 6% level, the rent is based on the HUD maximum allowable rent, and those are adjusted on an annual basis. They usually come out in April. They'll probably come out after this lottery is in effect. So just to be advised that this qualification period is using one set of limits. They will change. They will definitely change by September. If you apply again a year from now, they will have also changed. So like everything in housing, nothing is permanent. The rules are always changing on us. And again, you don't have to know them, but we do have to follow them on an annual basis. Next question we get a lot, are there minimum income limits? And the answer is yes, there are minimum income limits in effect for the unsubsidized units. And this is because we don't want to see people become cost burdened. And that's a housing term for when you're paying more than 30% of your income towards rent. When that happens, and let's say you're paying 50, 60, sometimes 70% of your income towards rent, you have very little margin. So let's say that's happening and then your car breaks down or you have a medical bill or something happens or the refrigerator breaks or who knows what it is. Now all of a sudden you're faced with a difficult time paying your rent, and that's where you start to see people falling behind. So because Beacon and Harbor Light really value the human element and wanting to make sure people feel comfortable, I think Matt really addressed that. There are minimum income limits, and that's just to make sure people don't get sort of ahead of themselves over their skis. So there are minimum income limits in effect for the unsubsidized units. Next question, again about the age restriction. Do all household members have to meet the restriction? The answer is no. If you are a parent and a child and only one of you is 55 and up, you could qualify as two people. There are still only one bedrooms or studios, but you could have that configuration. If you are slightly older or slightly younger than your spouse, only one of you meets it, that's absolutely fine. And again, it has to be on the day of the lottery. There's a distinction here that I want to draw out. How many of you have ever seen housing where you can apply for below that age if you have a disability, right? That's called a disability exception. You often see that in public housing. That is not this type of affordable housing. So this property does not have a disability exception. The age limits are fixed. There are no exceptions other than the 55 or 65. No disability exception. So it's a little different. Are there any 2 or 3 bedrooms? No, there are not. Again, this goes back to the state sanitary code and occupancy. Typically, you have to have at least 50 square feet of bedroom space per person. So sometimes in the open market, you'll see people where 1 or 2 people could have a 4-bedroom apartment. Lucky for them. I'd love that. That'd be great. Sometimes you see where you have 6 people crammed into a 2-bedroom. Those things all happen. They don't happen in well-run, well-managed affordable housing, which is what this is. So we have to follow the state occupancy standards, relative square footage to occupancy. So everyone is there. Is there an asset limit? This one is very complicated and I'll do my best to make it simple, but the truth is it is hard and it's complicated. If you have a subsidized unit, there may be asset limits in effect depending on the type of subsidy. There are multiple subsidy types of the property, and if you think of it like cards that you're dealing out, it really depends on what type of subsidy is for the unit that you end up getting assigned. Just like the income limits and the maximum rents, the asset limits are changing right now too. The federal government is in the process of revising some of those regulations. So if you are in a subsidized unit, there may be an asset limit, and that may be something that you'll have to confront. There are different types of assets that are included or excluded. So every situation is very unique, and it really depends on the circumstances. We will evaluate that as you get to the lease up, really, but Beacon will evaluate it. No one will be denied access to the lottery on the basis of assets, because assets change, right? I might have a bunch of money in a savings account now that I don't have anymore. I might have an investment account that's high and I might make a bad deal and I'm not so high anymore. Things like that do change, money moves. So the assets themselves are only a portion of what we look at. So there are changing limits. At the moment, there are no asset limits for the unsubsidized units. That's a really important word, unsubsidized, but we do look at asset income. And that typically comes in the form of interest or dividends, or if you're taking regular withdrawals from a retirement account, all those things are income from an asset that you hold. So that will be added to your overall income, but it depends on the type. And there's two different ways of looking at it. There's the actual value of assets, which is the actual interest, the actual dividends, something you might see on like a 1099 at the end of the year. That's one way of looking at in asset income. The other way is to look at the imputed value, which is a percentage of the total. And right now, for purposes of this lottery, we are using 0.06% of all assets, which mathematically, for those mathematicians in the room, is 0.0006. So you'd have to have a ton of money, like $50 million to really make that difference. But these things are changing. The passbook rate changes every year. So it's fairly complicated, and it's only one factor of what we're looking at in terms of income. Are pets allowed? Yes, very pet friendly. There are some breed restrictions. I think there are also some species restrictions, right? Can you have poisonous snakes in this building?
So we will be allowing pets. It will be one dog or one cat, plus an additional, well, I'll say small animal, which, could be like a fish or something along those lines. There are some breed restrictions on the dogs, because it's a mass housing finance development. We use the mass housing restricted breed list. If you want a copy, we can supply you with a copy, but they're sort of the classically aggressive breeds, I guess you could say. There's also a weight restriction on the dogs of 40 pounds.
Thanks, Matt. And like the slide says, that is for pets. It's important to remember that in the world of housing and animals, that pets are one type, service animals are another, and emotional support animals are yet another. So if you have a need for either of those latter two groups, you'll need medical documentation to sort of substantiate that. But that, of course, is something that is always considered and available to you. All right, this is a really common question. Can you choose between a one-bedroom and a studio? And the answer is actually no. This is not quite the same as going into the open market and saying, oh, I really want that unit, has this. Everything is done according to a stacking plan that Jason and Matt had to work very hard on to get approved by the state. So throughout the building, everything is distributed by income type, by preference type. We're going to talk about local preference in a minute. There are sensory preferences, ADA preferences. So just like back to the cards, right? You don't put everything in the suits. You have to mix up the deck. So the stacking plan is essentially the idea of mixing up the cards so that not every one part of the building are all of the people that have the higher income group or all of the people that have a certain preference. So you can't choose because it depends on what your profile is relative to the units that you have been assigned. And that will come out of the lottery process. So it's a very complicated way of saying, no, you don't get to choose. We're very sorry. I still own a house, but I want to move into the development. The answer is yes, you can. However, if you are selected for the lottery, this unit must become your principal full-time residence. This only applies to the unsubsidized, to the unsubsidized units. I'm confusing myself now. There are typically asset limits for the subsidized units, and typically those asset limits would preclude you owning a house. So those two things kind of go together. But for the unsubsidized units, at the moment, there are no restrictions on owning a home, but it cannot be your primary residence. So a good example of this is someone who owns a home. They really don't want to keep up with it. The yard is too much. The sink is leaking. Their kids need a place. There are no starter homes available. So they might still own the home, let someone else live in the home. You might rent it and we'll count the rental income as part of your income, but you might live at BVLA. It's a very common sort of example that you might see. Your income and asset would have to put you in the right place for that. That's again, something that would be determined. So it's not a hard no, but it is something that has some restrictions, and any rental income would be added to your application. But strictly speaking, it cannot, but you can't have your apartment in Beverly and your summer house in, in Banff, and then your winter house in Florida, and you can't do that. That's not quite how this works. That gets to the next question. I like to go away for the winter. Can I sublease my apartment or rent it out as an Airbnb? Honest question. We actually do get this from people. The answer again is no. It has to be your principal full-time residence. You can take trips. You can be away. The lease will be very specific about what that means. So it doesn't mean you can't go visit your grandkids, but you can't go live with them for 4 months. That's not typically how this works. Similarly, the question is, can you have overnight guests? Of course you can. Of course people could come stay. They just can't live with you, right? You can't have someone living with you on a permanent basis who's not on the lease. So again, the lease will be very specific, and Beacon's policy, as I understand it, is usually not more than 2 weeks total per year. I don't know if Matt wants to elaborate a little bit on that.
That's correct. And we don't require that you register a guest or anything like that, but if it comes to our attention that somebody is making it their full-time residence, and there are ways of determining that, it's not allowed by the development. So I guess enforce the lease as the lease states.
Okay. All right. Next part, the lottery pools, which sounds very exciting, like we're going to go jumping into a swimming pool, but it's a good way to describe how we have it. So this lottery has local preference, which is for people who have an attachment to Beverly, Salem, or Peabody. We'll talk about that in just a little bit more detail. Who have an attachment to one of those 3 cities. That is what's called the local pool. Then there's also the open pool, which is all of those same people plus everybody else. So if you have local preference, you will be in both pools and you will be drawn twice. You'll hear your number twice. That's sort of a really important distinction that can be very confusing on the lottery. So on the day of the lottery, we'll go over that again. The way the lottery itself works, the whole point of it is to put you in order based on this arbitrary draw. So everyone will get a unique lottery number as part of their eligibility. That way, if you're in the lottery, instead of pulling someone's name out and saying, oh, Kristen Carlson, you're number 400. Good luck to you. Nobody knows what her number is. Kristen will know her number, maybe her family. I'll know the number, but I'm not the person pulling the tickets, and that's on purpose. So if you want to reveal yourself to the crowd, you can, but if you like to remain private, which most people do, you'll know your number, I'll know the number, but the person pulling the tickets will not know the number. We'll do the local pool first, and we'll put everyone in order. Then we'll do the open pool next, and we'll put everyone in order. And on the day of the lottery, that's actually all we do. We won't have the final determination of who gets what unit that night. Then we'll go back, and together we look and say, okay, who in the lottery had a preference for mobility or sensory units? And we award those units first. And that goes back to federal fair housing regulation, that if you have a need for a mobility assisted unit or a sensory preference, say hard of hearing, hard of vision, those are what that means, then you will have priority for units that are of that type. Still based on the lottery, still based on the draw, but those are the first group of units that we assign. Next will be the local preference units. So it could be that you have a wonderful local draw and a terrible open draw. That might be okay because we award local preference first. So maybe you get a local unit first, and then by the time we get back to the open, you wouldn't have gotten one, but you had a local number and you were already awarded first. And then at the end of the process, we'll award the open pool, unrestricted units. Those go last. And then after that, someone earlier asked, well, what happens with the wait list? How do I get on the wait list? The wait list is created after the open draw order. So if you're in the lottery and you get a unit, then you have a unit. You're in the pipeline for leasing. Let's say you didn't get a unit. You're going to go on the wait list in the order you were drawn. If you apply after the lottery, even 1 minute after the lottery closes at 4 o'clock, you will go onto the wait list in the order that you are received. I'm going to emphasize that point because it's really important. This lottery closes March 1st at 4 o'clock. What that means is if you're going to come to our office and hand me your application, you need to be in our door by 4 o'clock. It doesn't mean that you have to speak to me. You need to be in the door. Think of it like a very exclusive party. If you're in the door before we lock it, you're in the party. But if you're still outside and you haven't arrived, or you get to the party at 4:05, you will be late. You will not be in the lottery. Similar for email. If you're submitting it by email or by fax that has a timestamp and I can see, unfortunately, Jason, your application arrived at 4:07. The timestamp proves it. You will be not in the lottery. You'll be on the wait list. The only exception where there's a little wiggle here is if you mail it. If you mail it, it only has to be postmarked by the 1st. So if you get to the post office at 5:27 and they still take it from you, I don't know that because I'm not sitting at the post office. So it's 4 o'clock on March 1st if you're in person, or it's postmarked by March 1st if you're going to mail it. No exceptions. There has to be a limit. Do not beg for mercy. We cannot make exceptions. I'm very sorry. It's very sad. That's actually the minutes from 4 to 4:15 on the end of the lottery are some of the hardest of the entire year for me because we have people that are so close that are not there, and we have to be firm. We just can't make exceptions. Okay, local preference. This is a really important question for anyone who is connected to Beverly, Peabody, or Salem. This is a very unusual local preference. We can work really hard to try to get this for people. So if you are grateful for this, you should thank Matt and Jason because it was really their doing. For the initial lease up, there are a number of units, a total of 60 that have the potential for local preference. What that means are the following 3 groups of people. Applicants who are current residents of, or their parents or their children are current residents of one of those 3 cities. So let's say you do not live in one of the 3 cities, but your kids do, and you want to move closer to them, you could claim local preference. Alternatively, let's say you are the child and you have a 100-year-old parent that you want to move closer to who lives in one of those cities. You could claim local preference under current residency. The next group is the same exact concept within the last 2 years. So you were here, but you moved out. Your kids were here, but they moved out. If it's in the last 2 years, then you could claim local preference. Or if you work in the city of Beverly, Peabody, or Salem, not work for the city, but in the city. So in this lottery, Kristen and I both work for Harbor Light Homes in Beverly. If we met the age restriction, we could get local preference by virtue of where we work. Once the building is fully occupied, the concept of local preference disappears. It is a one-time temporary preference. So once the unit is leased and leases are signed, local preference goes away. The only number that matters was your open pool number if you're on the wait list. There are a few other preferences in effect. As I said before, there are some units set aside for mobility and sensory. Those again for people who have a documented need for a mobility assisted unit or a documented need for sensory assisted unit. There are also 4 preferences defined by mass housing, and mass housing always has its own sort of different rules. I'm just going to read these. The long definition is available to you. We're happy to provide it, but essentially it comes down to 4 different groups in this order. Preference number 1 is homelessness due to displacement by natural forces. That typically means like a hurricane has displaced you from your house. Preference 2, homelessness due to displacement by public action or urban renewal. If the city of Beverly took your house and knocked it down for some reason, that's typically what that means. Preference 3 is homelessness due to displacement by public action of the state sanitary code. Say you're living in a place and it's condemned due to an open hole from the roof and rodents in every crevice. Okay, that might be an example of preference 3. And preference 4 is involuntary displacement by domestic violence, rape or dating violence, sexual assault or stalking. It's actually very common. It does happen. So these are the 4 preferences that are in effect as well throughout the entire building. All right, I'm going to pause for applause for this moment and get it over to Jason to talk a little bit about Blue Studios.
Oh, great.
There you go.
Yes, so the lottery that we're talking about today is for those 85 affordable senior apartments. But as I mentioned earlier, we will also have 6 live work studios, which will have an occupancy preference for artists. Those are not a part of this lottery. They are not income or age restricted. So that is a separate leasing and application process. And that information will be available on the website in later this spring, and the leasing process for that will be happening this summer. But if in the meantime you are interested, you can reach out to us via email, and we can keep you on our contact list and provide any additional information. We also have flyers here for those units specifically. And as I mentioned, there is an occupancy preference for artists. And so similar to the preferences that Anna just laid out for the affordable senior units, that kind of gives you preferential access to these units. Being an artist will give you preferential access to these units. What does that mean? Being an artist is a very, so anyone can interpret it differently, right? So we had to put a definition on it. And so our definition is a person who has a commitment to and or participation in the arts beyond that of a hobby. So meaning that it takes a lot of your time. This does not mean that the artist's income is derived primarily or even partially from their artistic practice. So, you can be a sculptor, a watercolor painter, a musician, and as long as it's, it's an endeavor that takes up more of your time than that of a hobby, then we would consider you an artist and you would get preference for these units. So flyers here, you can apply at Beverly Village at beaconcommunityllc.com, and we will also put information up on the website once those applications become available. The website link, livebeverlyvillage.com, will be up on the screen at the end of this presentation.
Thanks, Jason. For those of you in the room, I did put them in this fetching red folder to indicate this is different, something else. But if you have someone who's interested, please feel free to take one. This is sort of the summary of the key details, things we've talked about. So we had our first public information session a couple weeks ago, January 25th, 6 o'clock. That's right now. It's happening. Here we are. March 1st at 4 o'clock is the final application deadline. I think I've given that sufficient detail. April 4th at 6 o'clock right here, same bat time, same bat channel. We will have the lottery in this room. And I'm sure that all 4 of us will be here, but I think the person doing the drawing will probably be someone else. So if you'd like to attend, welcome to attend in person. It will also be on Zoom and recorded for people to watch from home. And then fall 2024, as Jason said, is the anticipated construction completion. You may have noticed that the world is very different from a construction perspective than it was even 4 or 5 years ago. And there are factors beyond everyone's control. So we're aiming for fall. I would not give notice at your current place. I would not get a tattoo that says BVLA or bust. We're not quite there yet. So let's be flexible about that. But the goal is to have a fall 2024 completion. As Jason said, there's a website specific to this property, livebeverlyvillage.com. There's applications there in 5 different languages. You can also get an application by emailing us. We'll send one to you if you don't have a printer, or email the one to you. You can get them in person from our office, which is at 283 Elliott Street, Beverly Town Hall. The Council on Aging right here has them, and also the Beverly Public Library. And I have a table of them over here with me tonight, as well. Feel free to take them. And then lastly, if you have any additional questions of any kind about anything we've said, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm a real person. I try to answer my phone and keep up with it as much as I can, and I try to respond to emails in a timely fashion. So if I don't know the answer, I have no shame of asking Matt or Jasa or Kristen what the answer is. So I will try to make you feel comfortable with the process. And I believe that concludes our session. We can move to Q&A, and we're going to go ahead and stop the recording.